Yes, thank you very much. We are so very glad to be able to connect to you all over again for a very important discussion in our Facebook live series. We are trying to connect to our students and cover all the educational dimensions that we have. Today we are going to discuss a very important theme, that is learning to be creative, which is a part of BEGE 145 soft skills course that we have at the undergraduate level. Friends, learners and all those who are connected, we are these days we are when we are surrounded by some kind of negativity on account of pandemic, there is a kind of concern in everyone's mind that perhaps soft skills are also facing a threat. Everyone is concerned about himself or herself. Everyone is looking at phone all the time. If you go to public places, if you are traveling in public transport, no one has to do anything else. No one is concerned about the well-being of people nearby. So there is a kind of concern that perhaps soft skills are also going to be in a way eliminated very soon. So I think that today's discussion that we are going to have is in that direction, and we are saying that it is important to nurture, to talk about soft skills. It is important that we take into account the aspect of creativity. How can we learn to be creative? When I'm going to discuss with you today, I'll be touch upon how can we define creativity, how can we understand and absorb the parameters to understand creativity. We will also discuss how we can use creativity as a soft skill. We are also going to elaborate on how to measure creativity, how to learn creativity. We'll also discuss ways and means as far as application of creativity is concerned. I'll also talk about how we can some tips as to on a day-to-day basis how we can talk about the creativity part and the soft skills part. Friends, it is when we understand, when we think about what is the purpose of education, why do we spend so much time in acquiring knowledge and all the degrees that you are studying. I think it is basically about discovering our most creative self. When we are studying, it is creativity is the bottom line, is the hallmark, is the most important aspect. I think it is the purpose of human life also. In that sense, I'm saying that nothing can match the importance of creativity. If you look at how can we define creativity, friends, if you look at the Oxford Learners Dictionary, we find that creativity has been linked with the use of skill and imagination to produce something new or produce art. That is very important, and you will find that what are the keywords here, where you have to new and artistic, which is something unique and which is very aesthetically very, very pleasant. So there are we have to let's look at the word skill, imagination, produce, new, and art. That is very important. So it's a skill. It could be any skill, and that can be explored. In other words, I may say that it refers to an ability that any person may possess. Creativity also involves in using one's skill in an innovative way. This would be possible when you apply imagination to use your skill effectively. I think that if I take you to William Wordsworth, the way he talks about spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility, that is how he would talk about it. And then imagination is the most crucial component of creativity. You of course you follow people who have done it before you, but then you have to give it a very decisive, very unique dimension to this, to appeal the imagination of others also. So yes, let's go forward. What are the key indicators of creativity? How do we assume that this will this will lead to creativity? It's newness, novelty of the idea. How you are adding to the current body of knowledge that is available. That is very crucial. And if you are not thinking about that, perhaps you need to redo that again. Skill or talent, you have to identify: is it writing, is it thinking, is it analysis, it is contemplation. You will discuss about Bloom's taxonomy in that sense, and how application and learning, knowledge part, all those aspects get covered. Then it comes after skill and talent. I told you about imagination, where you have to just with open eyes or closed eyes, you see this world in a unique way, in a very distinct way, and imagine a new reality, imagine a new world order, imagine and come out with a new worldview. That is important, and which has to be aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes we have to, we are little, we develop a sense of repulsion also, but that sense of repulsion and that kind of disinterestedness has also aesthetically pleasing. That is very important, and it has to be appropriate and balanced. You see, whatever you think, whatever far-fetched imagination, or like your flight of imagination, it has to be balanced, it has to be logical. We discuss at other levels of the course about 7 C's of communication. I think that has to be like completeness, credibility, and clarity. All those aspects have to be brought in so that we can understand the aspect of appropriateness and then balanced approach. We are also like, we need to, when we are discussing about creativity, thinking out of the box. This word is a very cliched, oft repeated, and sometimes not taken very seriously, but it is crucial. Out of box means when you are imagining this, reimagining this, and when you are about to come out with your unique statement, whether it is really new, whether it will really lead to a kind of it will make a qualitative change to the current body of knowledge. That is very important. So yes, I was we were discussing as to how do we define creativity. You see, if you look at psychologists, they view creativity in a slightly different manner. Their emphasis is more on thinking differently so that it helps in problem solving. Friends, you see, creativity is not about your self-enhancement and aggrandizement. It is about making this world better, kind of taking it to a next level where you are enabling everyone else to utilize this global place in a better way. That is important. So the problem solving, if whatever you are doing, if you are writing, if you are into singing or any other artistic purpose or any other scientific discipline even, that has to be in a way problem solving. Creativity can also be defined as the tendency to generate or recognize ideas, alternatives, and possibilities. This is also like, after what you have studied, after you have taken into consideration what has been thought about, what has been created, and what has been given to you by your predecessors, then how can you put that in perspective and find a way forward? Generate and recognize ideas. So you put, you'll find all positive and negative ideas, the way you can merge those together, the way you can set up a sense of equilibrium there, and then you can find a way forward. That is important. This is also important that when we are talking about problem solving, we are talking about recognizing ideas and exploring new possibilities. It is also important that there is a stress on communicating with others. You see, people give us ideas, when we are part of a larger scheme of things, then, we come across, newer issues, problems, challenges, and then we discover ways how shall we overcome that. So that is very important, and communicating with others and entertaining ourselves. This is very important, friends. Like, I told you that, like, how, it's a skill, it's about imagination, it's about like what are the characters traits and learning habits. I think this is very important, and I would say that resilience comes first. What is resilience here? An ability to tolerate uncertainty and persevere at a task to overcome obstacles. Everyone is saying that we are living in VUCA times. VUCA is like where things are volatile, uncertain. We cannot, make out as to what will be the order next day. Volatile, uncertain, and ambiguous also. So VUCA, like, I think it is about that where we become resilient. We refuse to give up. We don't say that, we don't say no. We accept our failures. We accept our challenges, and that never say die attitude is our mantra, is our way of functioning, is a part of our attitude that is central. So after resilience, after a never say die attitude, after always on your mission, that is very important. So not being afraid to make or learn from mistake, that is very important. You see, it's about effort. Creativity is not that you wake up one day and then you become creative. It's a constant sense of ability to keep nurturing yourself, keep learning from the mistakes, never feel shy of the failures. Whatever failures which come your way is in a way to enhance your idea of creativity. The perfection is a part of, like, is not one stop point, is a part of your journey. And then we are talking about an ability to suspend judgment while generating ideas. Friends, it is easier to judge people. It's easier to kind of arrive at conclusions very soon. That is not how it should be. Creativity also involves a sense of clear judgment and impartial attitude, where you are not making any prejudiced opinions about anyone, and where you are generating ideas, and willingness to take sensible risks. That is important, where you are not fearful of the consequences. Sometimes we fear of losses, we fear of some kind of disruption in our regular routine, but that is not how it should be. We should be willing to put that something to the stake. We should be willing to kind of not compromise from the larger vision that we have, and then to go out of the comfort zone. We have to come out of that cozy chamber that we develop around ourselves. We need to kind of fight out, and we need to overcome our comfort zone to be able to come out of that new creative self that we are talking about, imaginative self, and then something which will solve problem for not only at the micro level but at the macro level also. That is important. So what we are discussing here, that key factors, that this is something that thinking out of the box is something that we discussed already, where you are about originality, where you are talking about we can discuss, like, what are the traits in this. When we say thinking out of the, we can elaborate on this a bit further, where we are talking about innovation, production, divergent thinking, and originality. This is like, I think out of box, may appear to be a bit abstract to all of us. And like where we are, innovation, where you develop a new premise, where you develop a new order, like whatever is there, existing previously. So production is like, you understand what are the four production of what are the 4 factors of production, which involves, like in economics we study land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. You have to put together, and that a sense of entrepreneurial self is involved. So it's not about just visualizing and putting things in at the mental level. No, it's about production. It's about putting your hands in the mud, putting your whole self into the perspective, and then creating something. And when we are talking about divergent thinking, it's about putting all available worldviews in a perspective, taking into account some alternatives, those who are opposing you, those who are kind of countering you with alternative opinions. They are trying to help you, like what Kabir used to say, nindak nire rakhiye angan kuti chhawaye. That is very important, that we assimilate of people. We when we are saying that in our group behavior, in our team behavior, when we listen to each other, when we listen to even unspoken words, even when we read between the lines, that is how it helps us. And divergent thinking, where sometimes you just come out of the usual way that you normally think, and then you think from, like you step into someone else's shoes. You know that is difficult to step into someone else's shoes, but that is required to become a true leader, to come out with a creative self. Divergent views, divergent ideas, alternative opinions, multiple perspectives that will pave our way, that will create a smoother way for us in our endeavor to make our creativity count. That is very important. As far as originality is concerned, originality, some people say that it's a myth, or if whatever, 20 centuries which have gone by, everything has been done. How can we come out with originality? I think this is important, that we, each one of us is a person who can bring about something new, something creative, something imaginative. So it's though abstract, I would say that we should still try and continue in that direction to achieve something original. I think if you think constantly in the direction of making this world a better place, of how because what previous people did, they perhaps at that time humanity was not surrounded with so many issues, so many problems and challenges. So what you will do now, for example, how the whole movement in this world is being scuttled, and in a way, the whole world has come to a standstill. What now you do, what our scientists do, what our frontline warriors do, that will create something very, very new, original, imaginative. And I think that yes, we are born to make a very original, unique, aesthetically pleasant contribution for the humanity. If we go forward, there is a knowledge dimension there. When we think about creativity, when we discuss about the idea, I think there's a factual knowledge aspect, where we put into perspective the basic elements that students must know to become acquainted with a discipline or solve problems in it. It is about whatever the body of knowledge that is available. We simply cannot overlook and discount whatever other people have done. So in that thing, we have to take into account factual knowledge domain dimension. After that, we have a conceptual knowledge dimension, which is about interrelationship among the basic elements within a larger structure that enable them to function together. So yes, that knowledge dimension, where we keep into account the statistics part, factual, which remains static, which remains it's a matter of and then comes the conceptual knowledge, which is like principles and disciplinary designs. and relationship where you put together the basic elements in a larger structure. So while following creativity, it is important that we keep in perspective the knowledge dimension also in this. When we are talking about factual and then conceptual, it is important that we look at the procedural also, how to do something. In our checklist, we can kind of demarcate as to how to do something, methods of inquiry, criteria for using skills, algorithms, techniques, methods. In the times of artificial intelligence, I mean, these things have begun to matter even more. So we will take into account like algorithms, techniques, and methods which go into the procedural part. How, this is like how it will be done. Now, what will be the procedure? And then, on the top of it, you find metacognitive knowledge, where you have knowledge of cognition in general, as well as awareness and knowledge of one's own. So this is very important that you at the level of micro and macro analysis, where you have concept and procedure before you, and then you have your individual and the larger picture before you. Then if we begin to think about in that direction, that will count very much. So, and then we will try and like some this chapter with some ways of thinking creatively. What are the ways? I mean, I would suggest that we need to brainstorm ideas on one topic onto a larger piece of paper. Don't edit, just put in whatever there in your mind. Just write it down, and as soon as they come into, don't delay. Whatever, if you see some, on a street, on a red light, if you see someone begging, do you not feel shaken? Do you not feel disturbed? Do you not kind of look at it in a different way, and do you not feel like making a change to the kind of scarcity that people are facing? What does hit your mind? Would you just note that? Do you think of some solution at that time? What is that emotional outburst? Do you immediately come out with some? I would suggest that you write it down, brainstorming, thinking aloud, just putting in perspective, allowing yourself to play with an idea while you go for a walk. Like I'm saying that, constant thinking, allowing your mind to absorb and react to the situation. That is very central. And then you have to, I was saying that, using, writing all that down. Otherwise, we may tend to forget. And if you have written it down, you can, cross-check, you can complement idea number 1 to, all other ideas in the line. So kind of, you can sequentialize them, or you can, set up some cross connection also in between. So that is important. Ask the same question at least 20 times and give. In the first part, when we were talking about balanced thinking, aesthetical balance, aesthetical pleasantness, I think that is sorted out and attended when we are asking the same question. When we come across a problem, do we think that the problem that we have come up with is the most effective, have we come up with the most effective solution? If we ask that question time and again, constantly, with a sense of relentless and resilience, I think then we'll be able to come up with alternative solutions, different solutions which will be appreciated by others. I'm trying to, add to that those ways that through which we can develop creative thinking, creativity, combine some of the features of two objects or ideas to see if you can create several more. Again, a divergent thinking where you bring together two different perspective. Sometimes if you study the it's a European model, if you go to the African continent, if you go to Australian continent, and then you broaden your worldview with how people there have developed a solution. People they have come up with an idea to come out with a life-saving thing. That is important. change your routine. Is like, don't fall into a very dead, you can say prosaic routine, and you have to, think in a different way. You have to walk a different route to, your college, your university, or even if you are within your house, you can, switch places, and, you can look at this world from different frames of reference. So that is very important. And what I'm trying to suggest, that you have to allow your mind to be influenced by new stimuli, such as, sometimes you may try some art, music, literature, and other cultural practices that are so very popular in our country. And we have to, open to ideas, and when they are still, you look for the ways of making things work and pushing the idea to its limits. That is so very central. Like, you have to take one idea to its logical culmination. You cannot give up halfway. If you're developing an idea about, say, for example, climate change, poverty, long overdue problems, which critical problems before humanity, which are being looked for solutions. So if you are thinking about that, you have to take it to its limit, until and unless you find a solution to that. That is very central. So I would suggest this, and these are the ways. And again, what I'm trying to suggest to you, what we are trying to discuss here, is a step in that direction. You can always come out with your own. We are basically discussing the broad general principles. There is always something that you can do, rely, and we always say that, this is the, being creative is the hallmark, is the overall larger purpose of our education. So whatever you do in a day, when you listen to people, read people, write about and speak about, then you have to absorb these principles, practice these principles, and if there is something new, that you can always talk about. I mean, when we are talking about ways of nurturing this, there are a couple of things that I have listed for you in terms of reflection. Reflection is a high order, where you are constantly engaged with, when there is no sense of break. It's not like my study hours is like 6 hours. Reflection is about 24 hours a day, 365 365 days a year. So that kind of 24/7 engagement with the issue and problem that you are engaging. Rationality. Again, we are talking about an intelligent way of handling things, where you talk about balance, you talk about equilibrium, you talk about feasibility, where you talk about how looking at the harmonious, holistic ways of how this humanity has evolved. Honesty is very important. You cannot do something very, very sensational and just to make the change. I mean, creativity is about highest principled way of honestly putting up solutions. So again, self-awareness, open-mindedness, and discipline. I'm sure you are observing these, and we are discussing this in a very important way, detailed manner in our course material. You would be trying to study that even more during the course of this. That will help you. Again, there is no shortcut to success. Discipline will ensure that you are able to achieve all your goals, your destinations, and open-mindedness. I have told you that an intellectual, an original person, a creative person has to be public-minded, has to listen to people. If you, like, India is a microcosm of the whole world. If you go around, if you go, like, say, northeast, if you go to south, if you go to west, you'll find that different people have different unique ways of imagining this world. You put that in a manner that you are able to present a more practical, more unique idea about solving the most enduring problems before us. So I think this is how we can understand creativity. This is how we have discussed some ways, some challenges in our way and this course that we are discussing at the undergraduate level, BEGE 145 soft skills, I think you continue studying this even more. If there is any problem, we will discuss with you. There are, like, some useful tips. If you if there is something you want to do, just do it. In case of a block, take a break. Emotions do bring solutions. Don't just be like just about facts and figures. Improve your note taking, keep writing, and there's the best time for everything. Have other people to evaluate your ideas. This kind of asking your peers, your classmates, your colleagues, your people in the neighborhood. Develop a dialogic discussion framework where you can come up with. So again, I'm saying that you may discuss this, and I would thank you for your this constant presence and your attention. We will come back with a similar program very soon, and in the meantime you keep studying the material that we have shared with you. I wish all the best and all the success and a creative best in your life. Thank you very much.